Integration Center at the International School of Creative Sciences. Dr. Shata herself is a recipient of several awards, including winner of the Emirate Woman Award in 2011, SME Health and Wellness Award 2015, the 50 Women Leadership Award in Healthcare in 2016, Dubai Healthcare City Authority Award for the Best Pediatric Rehabilitation Center in 2017, Dubai Health Authority Excellence Award in 2018, and Female Leader of the Year Award in 2018, and more recently, the Global Cartier Women's Initiative Award in 2019. Please welcome Dr. Hiba Shata as she shares her views on child safeguarding and ethical practices. Ma'am, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Sonakshi, and thank you, Dr. Fazil, and all the esteemed panel. It's not only a pleasure, but it's also an honor to be in such a diverse and interactive and engaging event. I'm very proud to be here today, and today we will be talking about a very important topic, which is the, I'm just trying to put the, sorry, anyway, it's not shown. Just give me 1 second to share with you my presentation. Today we are going to talk about child safeguarding and ethical practice, and as you many are teachers working with children, young adults. A child is defined as anybody between the age of 0 and 18, and many of you work with children, so it's a very important topic to address. Today we will cover safeguarding and child protection. What is it? The types of abuse, what to look for, what to do if you are concerned. And I just added a little bit on behavior management when aggressive behaviors happen in your classroom, and some of the safety measures. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I did when I prepared that. So let's talk about safeguarding. A lot of people use the term child protection. However, safeguarding is the umbrella where child protection lies underneath. So it is actually the promoting of the welfare of the children so that the children are protected against maltreatment, impairment in their health or development. Child safeguarding is about knowing that the children are growing up in circumstances that can give them effective care and health. Taking actions to enable children to reach to their maximum potentials. If a child is suffering from a significant harm or is likely to do so, action should be made to protect that child, and action should be taken to promote the welfare of children in need of additional support, like special needs students, even if they are not suffering from any harm or at immediate risk. While child protection is part of safeguarding, safeguarding is making sure that all children are safe and growing up healthy and developing appropriately with dignity. However, protection is the activity that we take to protect a child who is suffering from harm or is at risk of being harmed. Who's responsible? Everybody's responsible. As a society, as a community, everyone who comes in contact with a child is, whether it's a family member or someone who deals with the child, is responsible to ensure that the child is safeguarded. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Victoria. Victoria in 2000 is a girl who was abused by her great aunt and her fourth friend. And if you see this chart, you will see that she had been in contact with hundreds of people and still died because the reporting was not there. And the impact of Victoria had changed the way child protection policies in the UK. In 2012, I believe, Wadima is a girl in Abu Dhabi who was tortured by her father and his girlfriend. And unfortunately, she died, being harmed, burnt, beaten, locked down. And she was absent from school for a few days before her uncle discovered that. And then he spoke to her sister, who was also tortured. And the laws in UAE also came out, and it's called Wadima law, to protect children against abuse and ensure that they are growing in a protective environment. So today I'm going to talk about the principles. We in Maharat Learning Center and all our centers, we are very strict when it comes to child protection and child safety. So a child or young adult is defined as a person who's under the age of 18 years old. The welfare of a child or young person will be always a paramount. Families' values should be promoted. The right and wishes and feelings of children and young adults should be respected by everyone, listened to, and reasonable steps should be making to protect them from harm, discrimination, or degrading treatment. All children, whatever their age, cultural ability, gender, language, race, religious beliefs, sexual identity, will be treated with respect and have the right to receive the services in a very healthy and safe environment. So this is what we work for in our motto. So when it comes to child abuse, there are many types of abuse. There is a physical abuse, the emotional, the sexual, and there is neglect, which is considered part of abuse, and it's the most common one. Mostly abuse happen from family members, people who are within the circle of trust of the child. And abuse can happen to a child or a young person regardless of their gender, race, or ability. We cannot say that girls are abused more than boys or boys more abused than girls. It happens regardless. Any employee who is in contact with children should have the awareness and alert to any potential abuse of children, and take the necessary step to make sure that the child is not exposed to such an abuse anymore. So today I'm going to talk about the different types of abuse. There is the physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. The physical abuse is deliberately hurting a child, causing injuries such as bruises, broken bones, cuts. A child who is physically abused suffer violence such as being hit, kicked, poisoned, burned, slapped, thrown at by objects that are hard and harmful. Sometimes if it's a little baby, it's shaking the child and cause non-accidental head injuries. This includes also sometimes induced illness, which when parents or caregiver cause deliberately some symptoms in the child in order to gain money or beg or God forbid. So the physical signs of physical abuse will vary from bruises, bite marks, bruised eyes, burns, injuries in the side of the mouth and the ear, injuries to the limbs or genitalia area. I put some pictures. Again, it's important to recognize that there are areas which is normal for a child to fall and hurt. For example, the elbows, the knees, the forehead or the chin. But the ear area is commonly because somebody has pulled the child's ear. Slap on the face usually leave a mark on the face. A bite have the mark of the teeth on the child. One of the pictures I have here, you can see that the bone has healed in a wrong position, so you can notice that it is not straight. Again, some people slap their children with belts, so you can see marks of belts on the child's body. In this demonstration, you can see that these are the common area for abuse: neck, cheeks, the inner side and the arm, the hands, the thighs, and the feet, because this is not a part where accident usually happens. Accident usually affect shoulders, the arm and the leg side, and usually head. But cheeks, it's usually because of abuse. Now again here, if you can see this marks in red, these are the most common for abuse areas. And it's important that we recognize that even if a child comes with a bruise in his inner arm, it could be an accident. So we don't have to jump that say that the child is abused because of the area. We have to ask questions. We have to make sure that the child is able to tell us what happened, or if somebody was with the child, have a very valid story to tell you. But again, sometimes accidents do happen in areas where we don't expect them to happen. So some of the other signs is people coming up with excuses, something that does not make sense as the cause for the injury. Sometimes the child doesn't want to talk about it, or the parents don't want to talk about it. If the injuries is untreated, or if we have a self-injurious behavior or aggression to others, this is something that happens when a child is constantly abused. Then he starts to harm himself by himself, or start to become aggressive and hit other kids. History of falls and minor alignment. So when we see like bone dislocated, bones not healing properly, enuresis, incopesis, doctor or center hopping. Yani the child is jumping from one medical center to another because parents don't want to explain why the child is having this injury. Sometimes the child will be withdrawn, doesn't want anyone to touch him, fearful of people, fearful of going back home. Sometimes parents just do excessive punishment. They love the child, but they don't know how to deal with his tantrums or with his behaviors. So they tend to become excessively punishing, and we can see that. Sexual abuse is two types. There is the contact and the non-contact. The contact we all know is when touching, penetration, forcing a child or encouraging them to engage in sexual activity. But the non-contact abuse is the one that is more common today, where the child is encouraged or taking part or steps in hearing or watching something that he should not be seeing of a sexual act. Grooming, viewing, making movies or pictures or photographs. All this is non-contact abuse. And some of the signs of the contact abuse of soreness, itching, bleeding, bruises, transmitted infections, sleeping problems, self-harm. Sometimes the child will feel like they are so isolated, they will have some suicidal ideas, and of course the harm of being pregnant for girls at a very young age. The non-contact abuse is when somebody starts to talk to a girl or a small boy and pretend that they love them, and then they take pictures or photos and start to ask them for favors or do things for them and abuse them emotionally, as well as it's considered part of sexual abuse as well. So some of the signs of the abuse is the child wants to be away from people, anxious, low in mood. You can see also some children doing actions, games, using language as well that is of a sexual nature and is not acceptable. They can become upset when they are removing their clothes. Maybe they go to drugs, unusual amounts. If they are really involved, they might be receiving gifts from the abuser to keep them quiet, being given money. Parents and caregivers should be really aware of what's going on with the child. Again, as we said, a lot of times they're withdrawn, feeling alone, they don't want to talk about it. The other type of abuse is the emotional abuse, which is very, very common, and it can happen from parents, from brothers, from friends in school, peers, sometimes even from teachers. This is an ongoing emotional maltreatment and neglect of a child. It is part of like psychological abuse. The emotional abuse can involve deliberately trying to scare or humiliate a child by isolating or ignoring them. If the child is different, regardless whether it is a special need child or fat or short or black or white, or any difference might put the child as subject for emotional abuse. And emotionally abused children are often suffering another type of neglect at sometimes, but it's not necessarily the case. So some of the physical signs, there isn't really much physical signs more than the withdrawal and the child being low self-esteem. Best identified behavior, the behavior is the one that you can think of. Maybe this child has been abused and he's passive or demanding or crying a lot or overreactive or very sensitive. He's fearful, he doesn't want to be around people, anxious at doing something wrong, emotionally withdrawn. Maybe he doesn't sleep well. Self-esteem usually is very low. They might turn to become very aggressive and hitting and beating and reflect all their emotional disturbance into some aggressive behavior. Sometimes they have poor motor or tactile skills. They might indulge in self-harm. They can fail to reach potential, inappropriate emotional responses, overreactions, and of course, compulsive behavior. I want to jump to the next type of abuse, which is neglect. Now, neglect is when we fail to meet the child basic needs. So if a mother is depressed and she neglects the baby's crying or changing his pampers, that makes him suffer emotionally and physically as well. Neglect is the most common, and a child being left hungry or dirty without adequate clothing, sheltering, supervision, medical care, health care, toothbrushing, for example, may be put in danger and is not protected, and he can be subject to disease, subject to anemia, subject to malnourishment. A child might not get the love and care they need, and they will become emotionally disturbed. A child who's neglected will often suffer from other abuses as well. It's dangerous, and it can cause long-term damage. And people don't see neglect as an abuse, but it is it's a form of abuse. These are some pictures of, may not be neglect, but it is a child who's not showing the normal developmental milestone because he's not getting enough care and food, or necessarily medical treatment. So some of the physical signs of neglect is untreated injuries, dental issues, multiple infections and illnesses, skin sores, rashes, bites, scabies, thin or swollen tummy, anemia, failure to thrive, smell. Some of the other signs include unwashed clothes or belongings. Sometimes the teacher receives the child without a lunch, or without a proper lunch, or with damaged vegetables, lack of access of appropriate medication. The child may be suffering. Accidental injuries, like the child falls all the time, no treatment, missing his medical appointments, vaccination may be retarded. The child is always tired, maybe not getting enough sleep. Poor communication, sometimes children are living in unsuitable conditions, being left unsupervised, and the care of the child is not doing a good job. So what do you do if you are concerned? First, you need to watch for the signs of abuse. We as care providers, our mission is to raise awareness so that everyone who's in contact with the child will recognize when there is something that they should report. Do not assume that every child with an injury is being abused. It's not true. Sometimes it is just an accident and could be one time. But any accident, whatever it is, should take your concern and you should report it. So do not assume that someone else will report the concern. Maybe it is the only person, you are the only person who will notice that. So take note of any injuries or anything unusual and that raise your concern. Stay calm, don't panic, and you have to understand that when you build a community of aware professionals, you will have the support that you need. So if you're concerned, you have to make an internal report of your concern. There is a child protection team in the Community Development Authority. There is one in the police. Your first step is to investigate what happened, write your report, consult or take an advice of the psychologist or the counselor, or if you don't find anyone, call the child protection hotline. I just put the line here, it's 800-988, and tell them I have this case and I suspect this, and let them guide you of what you do next. Do not discuss this with parents at the first instance, because sometimes that would create a panic. The next thing you know that they would pull the child out of the school. It is very important that you involve the child protection team when you are talking to the parents, because they need to know that you care and it is a serious matter, and it is you will have taken all the steps if it is a real abuse. One of the things that we create is a form that any employee is trying to fill. You will put the details of the child, but then you will have a sketch of where is the injury happened, and then you put the notes and the history. This is a very simple documentation, and this documentation will help protect you so that the parent doesn't come back to you and say you caused that harm. And also it will protect the child, so the proper investigation and the proper steps following that reporting happens. The second part of this presentation, I wanted to talk about how do we address tantrums and aggression and self-injurious behavior using behavioral intervention techniques. Now, this is not the purpose of this workshop, but I really wanted to put some ideas in your raise awareness, because this is very important that when we see a child harming himself or harming others, that we take the necessary step and do the right thing. So we need to understand first, why is a behavior happening? How can we prevent it from happening? How can we replace that behavior, and how we respond differently? So when a behavior happens, there are two consequences. One, it is reinforced, so it happens more, or it is punished and it doesn't happen. It increases or stay the same depending on the reinforcement. Sorry. So if you, the child wants to obtain an object, he wants to take something, and you don't give it to him, you will have more behaviors because he wants to gain something. The other behavior happens when the child wants to avoid or escape doing the task. So you want him to take a shower, he doesn't want to, then he throw a tantrum. He's in the park, you want him to go inside, or in the garden, he doesn't want it, throw a tantrum. Or he wants your attention, you're busy and he wants to get your attention, he throws a tantrum. So it's very important to understand, why does the child do this behavior? Does he want to get something, or he's escaping or avoiding something? And sometimes it's sensory. It's the child is needing some sensory input, and therefore they engage in certain behavior like rocking or pulling their hair or eating or biting their nails, because it satisfies their sensory need. So what do? We do what we call functional behavior assessment, which will include indirect assessment, talking to the people involved, teachers, caregiver, mother, and get exactly what's going on, what happened. And then sometimes we go and directly observe what's going on in the classroom or at home, when the behavior is happening, how it is happening. We look at the environment and we do what we call functional analysis, what happens before the behavior, during the behavior, and as a consequence of the behavior. And then we can come up with a report where we put what we call a behavior intervention plan. So how do we manipulate, or how can we change the behavior? One of the things we can do is changing the environment. So some of the things that we can do to change the environment is to provide the children, especially those with special needs, because their communication level, or even very young children below the age of 6, their communication level is very low and they don't know what to expect. And if they are taking from certain classroom to another classroom, or transition one task to another, they might not be feeling comfortable, and therefore they would throw tantrums or engage in some type of a behavior. When we prepare them by giving them visual support, showing them that we will start with this, then we will do that, increasing the reinforcement, the seating arrangement, the layout of the classroom, it will reduce the amount of surprises, and building the routines within the classroom can reduce the behaviors tremendously. Sometimes we modify the antecedents by giving the child, I don't know if you can see this, first and then, so they understand that there is schedules, and these schedules are consistent, so they can anticipate and be prepared for what's going to happen next. Instructional material in a fun way, changing their expectations. Not every child can do the full activity. If they do part of the activity, it should be fine. Alternate work with play. Make them choose. Do you like to sit and do this task on a computer? Do you want to write it down? Do you want to play with Play-Doh? Or do you want to do it by pasting and cutting? So giving them choices can also reduce the amount of tantrums and behavior that happen, because here we're talking about young children or special need children. And use the, if you do this, then you get that, so that they know that they will be, if they finish the task on their hand, this is a reward that they will get afterwards. Let me go here. This is some pictures of some of the visual schedules that can help build routines, can help children to understand what's going to happen, and can reduce the behavior. Teaching replacement behavior, replacing behavior for functional communication. We teach them how to communicate, how to ask, how to comply, engage in proper behaviors. So instead of shouting and screaming or pulling a chair, We will teach them how to give the teacher a card or ask properly or raise their hands so that they are better communicating, and then they don't need to be engaged in any behavior. Just because they cannot talk, it doesn't mean they know how to express their feelings, their emotions, or their needs. So we need to help them. Very importantly, when we want to work with the behavior, not only change the environment, not only change the antecedent, but we have to work with the consequences. So when we choose to teach the child a new behavior, we need to reinforce it by encouraging the child. Reinforcement when any skill is acquired, putting their drawings on the wall, giving them high five, saying well done, praise them in front of everyone. Even if you mess up, you can always get a new chance to make it up, but make sure the reinforcement is always available. Change your reaction to behavior. One of the things that we happen, because we're human and we deal with children all the time, and we sometimes overreact, especially if we are tired and we don't have the energy and then something goes wrong. Please do not shout, raise your voice, argue, grab the student, get in the student face, nag, preach, engage in power struggle, cornering the student, or make threats that you cannot carry out. Behavior management means that you need to be calm, secure the environment for the children so they don't get harmed, prevent physical accident. Make sure that your classroom, the furniture, the flow going in and out, there are no chemicals. Like I remember we had a child who had a gel, you know, the sanitizing gel. The bottle fell down on the floor and it spattered in his eyes and he got burnt. The eyes get burnt, so we had to wash them with a lot of water. But again, it's very important that we make sure that the flow of the classroom, the furniture setup, the way we go in and out, there are place for scissors, place for sharp instruments, and it is not within the reach of children. We have to be careful when we physically intervene, unless the child is doing a criminal offense or injuring themselves or others or causing considerable damage to property, including their own, like throwing their computers. We should not be really touching the child. So example of type of incidents that the staff physically intervene: if a child is attacking another child or a member or staff, a child is misusing dangerous material, he's running with a knife in his hand or a sharp instrument or scissors, or child is running in a corridor in a way that can, you know, knock a glass door and can harm himself. In this case, we need to do physical intervention. As a teacher, always promise yourself that you never yell in a class, not to talk in a line, not to throw things, hit, pinch, because at the end of the day, you are the teacher, you're the model. Children follow their teachers. As a consequence, when you have a tantrum or aggression, there are things that you can do. You can do extinction, which is not reinforce the behavior. You might not give the child what they want and let her of what she does not want. Natural consequence that punish behavior. So if you are playing and you spill ice cream, you don't get more ice cream. So it's not like I'm going to lock you in a room, but it's just, I'm not going to give you more of what you like. Planned consequence is like, okay, if we don't finish this task, you will lose your TV time, iPad time, going out for ice cream, or maybe you can do extra work. Like all these are ways to use as consequences. Physical guidance and blocking, as I said, this is done when a real harm is happening to the child or to the people or to the property around the child. So what do I do? If you're a teacher or a professional working with children and you happen to have a child tantruming or engaged in aggressive behavior, start by prevention. Be aware that this child, and this is one of the things that when you have a special need child, we do what we call a risk assessment and see if this child is of risk. And psychologists usually do that. And the team working with the child sometimes should know that this child like to run away all the time. So you are prepared and do not put to shape your environment to not allow the child to run away. Recognize the triggers or the targets to the behavior. Remember the chain, what happens when it happens. He runs away and then people run after him. He enjoys that they are running after him, then he runs more. So this is something, so if you know that, make sure that you have a functional behavior assessment, you have a functional behavior plan, that the team working with the child is aware of this plan and know what to do when it happens. The safety measures that I want to talk about at the end of my presentation is do not tempt children by leaving dangerous objects around them to play or feel or taste. Never leave a child alone, whether it's in a center or a residence or a school or a sports club, especially special needs children, because as we know, their communication level is very low and it's very difficult to get back from them any information of any harm or anything that have happened to them. In America, there was a study to show that 70% of children and young adults with special needs has been abused in some form. Keep all knocks free of hazards, check tables, chairs, shelving, electrical plugs, hanging cords, should all be safe. Use safety gates when you have stairways to prevent children from falling down. Fasten secure doors. Don't have, usually people put keys at the reach of the children. It's better to have locks that are at a high level so the kids cannot open and close the doors. Fire exits need to be left open, so you have to have a way of having it locked, but at the same time allow for emergency. Do not depend on window screens, because a lot of children just push each other against the screen and they can fall down with the screen. Move chairs and furniture away from passages and flow areas so that child can run freely and you know that they will not be harmed. Stairs is not a good place for playing. You have to teach children where they may or may not climb, so be sure that their playing equipment is maintained, is safe. You have enough padding underneath them. If you have a room and you have aggressive children, you need to pad the walls as well. Children are sensitive to indoor air quality problems. Sometimes contamination, pollution, and molds can cause breathing problems and suffocation. So what's a good practice? A good practice is always work in an open environment, avoid private and unobserved situations, encourage open communication with children without, unless in cases of clinician confidentiality. Ensure children work in an environment that promote fairness, respect, equal opportunities, avoid confrontation, and deal with bullying to ensure children feel safe and respected at all times. I want to talk about bullying because a lot of people and a lot of children are subject to bullying regardless of what is, sometimes just because you're different, you're coming from another country, you are bullied. One of the strategies that I found working with children is we had once few kids being bullied by some other group from grade 3. So we engaged them for one complete day to sit and work with these kids. So after sitting for one day, working with the children, playing with them, drawing, doing some work with them, they became friends and chaperone for these kids and bullying stopped. So it's very important that we engage and raise awareness among typical kids of the importance of respecting other people and the differences and diversity. Treat all children equally in a manner that is free from discrimination, regardless of age, culture, ability, gender, language, racial origin, religion, and sexual identity. And always put the welfare of the child and the young person first. Avoid unnecessary physical contact. I've seen people who like to hug, kiss, work with the children, hugging them all the time. And this is not really, it's not ethical. It's important that we keep the space between us and the children. Any form of manual physical support is required in terms of teaching the child how to write. You're putting your hand on his hand and trying to help him, or holding the scissor with him to cut. This is acceptable. But just sitting and having all the children hugged all the time, it might not be appropriate. It depends, of course, of cultures, but in a lot of cultures, this is not appropriate. Physical contact can be appropriate as necessarily, but not forcefully. You cannot force the child and hold him and try to pull them. This is part of, being physical, and it's not appropriate. If during the course of care you accidentally hurt a child, so let's say you're trying to pull the child fell down, he hurt his chin or his arm, it is very important that you take the necessary action by reporting the incident, describing what happened properly, and share that with your superior, your manager, or the class principal, the department, the head of that department. Inform other colleagues. It's very important, because if the child goes home and you don't report and you don't write and you don't inform anyone, that can be really very disturbing for the family. Involve the parents and caregiver whenever possible if children need to be changed, like going to toilets. Again, toilet training and going to the bathroom with the child is another task that some people have to do. You need to get permission from parents. Request written consents if you are required to go with the child in a car or in a taxi or in a school bus. Again, taking the child in your private car is not ethical practice. You need to have permission from the parents. Be an excellent role model for children. Include not smoking, not drinking, not coming in a way or a shape or clothes in a manner that is not acceptable. Always give enthusiastic and constructive feedback rather than negative criticism. So it's not you are lazy, instead, oh, that's a nice job, can you do better than that? Okay, we will do it nicer next time. So not trying to show the negative, but encourage more positive feedback. Recognize the developmental needs and capacity of the children. It's important that we encourage all children to develop and grow emotionally happy and stable and feeling supported and feeling loved. I think we've done this one. I went back. So what's a poor practice? Using negative words such bad boy, bad girl, naughty boy, using physical punishment such as smacking, spanking for any reason, time out and putting the child in a corner alone, or locking him in a room, or telling him, I will put you in the mice room, or like whatever can be scareful. Transporting children alone in a car on a journey, taking children to your home if for any reason, engaging in rough physical, sexual, provocative games, including horseplay, allowing or engaging in inappropriate touching of any form, using inappropriate language, or letting the child watch something that is inappropriate, like movies that have language that are not suitable for the age of the child. Aggressive or suggestive sexual comments to the child, or you are pretty or something like that. Reducing a child to tears as a form of control. This can happen sometimes from parents. They want to reinforce their control and they bring the child to tears. Allow allegations made by a child to go unchallenged, unrecorded. If the child say, someone hurt me, you need to investigate. Do not just ignore because you think it is not possible. Do things of a personal nature for a child that the child can do for themselves. Again, these are some of the poor practice that we do discourage people from doing. These are some resources for you if you like to read more about behavioral intervention. In summary, today we covered the child safeguarding, which is looking really after the wellness and healthy development of children. Child protection is taking an action against for children who are at risk or have been harmed by one of the 4 types of abuse. We talked about emotional, sexual, physical, and neglect. And finally, we talked a little bit about what we mean with behavior management, understanding the things that we can do in the classroom to prevent aggression from happening. And finally, how to create a safe environment for our children. I would like to thank you all and wish you all the best. And I hope that I contributed a little bit to this amazing event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hiba. Little bit is an understatement here. I think it was an eye-opener session because so many things that we learned here, and we've been flooded with a lot of, compliments and a lot of questions as well. So may I please request you to unshare your screen so I can please ask you the questions?
Share?
Unshare the screen, ma'am.
Share computers are optimized.
Yes, there is where it says share screen, just click on that, it'll unshare the screen.
I did, but okay, here, stop share.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take up some questions from the audience here. Uh, One of the questions that came up is, okay, is by Miss Sukanya. And she says, in class, can we use positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment? Which one is the best method to use to keep the safe environment in the classroom?
Of course, positive reinforcement. I would always go for positive reinforcement. Even if the child does something wrong, ignore it, but give him a chance to do something right and reinforce the right behavior. So if the child, let's say, is working with a group and he asks his colleague, can you give me a red pen? Immediately reinforce that. Wow, good asking. I like it when you ask your friend. Thank you for sharing. So you're giving a positive reinforcement. Now, let's say he throw the pen away, and that's a negative thing. I would ignore that and just keep on reinforcing positive behavior, because if I ignore, then probably he wants more of the reinforcement. He will not be engaged in that behavior again. Negative reinforcement, there is the negative comments, like telling him you're naughty boy, which we don't want to happen. But there is the negative reinforcement, which is if you don't finish your task, for example, on time, or if you finish your task on time, I will remove one task more. So for example, if you have to make 5, do 4, and I will remove number 5. That's negative because you are removing it. In behavior management, negative is not a negative comment. It is more of deleting something that the child don't like. So a negative reinforcement, yes, it is encouraged if it's deleting something that the child don't want. So you delete from him a task, or for example, he wants to go and do something and it's conditioned. So you tell him, okay, if he doesn't want to go out, you say, okay, I will remove that task from you. So you don't have to go out. And that would be a negative reinforcement in the fact this is reinforcing because you are removing something that the child don't want to do.
Thank you, Dr. Hiba. We have another question from Ms. Pratha Bhatia, who says, if I know someone who is undergoing physical abuse and they're not willing to accept help from another adult, how can I support such cases?
Is it a child or an adult who's been abused?
Child. It is mentioned about a child.
Okay. By law, if you noticed or seen something that is considered risk for the child, you have to report it. Now, whether they accept to get the help or no, you still have the duty to report. And this is where we as organization need to create that safety network for people to talk about these things comfortably. Because if I don't report and you don't report, one day this child will be so abused that it will be no return. There is a point of no return, like suicide or hurting himself or being harmed so bad that he's physically in danger. So very importantly that you report. So you start by counseling or taking an advice with someone within your organization who knows better, like a psychologist or psychiatrist, or someone who can help you. The second thing is you take that after you have investigated the matter and make sure that, okay, this is an abuse, because sometimes we think it's an abuse, but it's not. I mean, if the child is harming himself all the time and he's coming bruised all the time, you think that his parents are beating them, but in reality, it is him who's harming himself. So once we investigate properly, then it is time for us to tell authorities. And when you tell authorities, again, they have these lines where you are completely secure. They will not share this information with anyone. They will give you the safety place where you can talk and no one is going to judge you or come back to you and say. But it is very important to report and to make sure that someone else knows, and that when we have several cases of child protection, we have been suspecting, because we work with special need kids and there's always something going wrong with them and you have to report. So when the team comes together and we talk to the child protection team, the next step is they take the phone number of the parents, they contact the parents, they go visit them at home, they look at their child, they talk to them, they put a psychology team to work with the children and their parents. So there is an action that will happen. Now the parents, the most scary part is the parent thinking they will take my kid away from me. That's what scares parents. But again, this doesn't happen. Usually it doesn't happen. Most of the time it doesn't happen, unless the child has been really abused to a very dangerous area. most of the time it is just counseling, giving advice, trying to help the mother and the father. A lot of time there is depression in the home, there is neglect, there are things going on in the house, divorce, anything can happen. The parents will benefit from this free coming to their house, counselors supporting them, helping them as much as they can. We have seen also the opposite scenario where the child disappeared completely. The parents take them away and disappear and we don't know anything about them. It can happen, but at least we are fulfilled with the fact that we did our best, which we have reported, we've taken the necessary steps. You don't feel maybe this child would have the support they need if 3-4 people reported, then at one point someone will make an action.
That's actually quite wonderful and informative. We have another question, and I think it's a very pertinent question. Thank you. We have Lysandra Claire Fernandez who has asked this question. She says, with classes moved towards online learning in the near future, cyberbullying would increase. How can the school help to track and curb the same? What advice would you give to the school authorities for cyberbullying?
I think one of the very important thing is to raise awareness within the students themselves. If I would want to prevent bullying within the student community, I need to bring the children to this state of awareness to understand that saying a comment is harmful as much as doing it. Just bring that awareness. I mean, we know that boys in teenage, it's common that they are, that's part of their growing. But again, once the children are aware, because you cannot, you can always dictate, but it might not change anything. It's important that they are the one who prevent themselves from doing it. It is important when you raise the awareness that you also give the children the opportunity to report. Teach them how to report and give them that confidential line that they can come to report and not being scared or afraid or they will be the next victim if they report. Because sometimes it's not the child himself, it's a friend who knows or a sister or a brother. So if you give them that, but it needs a lot of marketing. Like we really need to bring it out and show it and show how effective it is so that girls and boys feel safe when they go to the psychology, the counselor and told them that this has happened and I don't know what to do, so they can help them.
Thank you, Dr. Hiba. We have some really interesting questions coming up, so I'm definitely going to pick them up with you. We have a question, and thank you for being patient, Dr. Hiba, with us.
No problem, it's my pleasure.
There are a lot of questions that might at this point of time go unanswered, but we're going to give Dr. Hiba. Dr. Hiba, if you could please share your email IDs.
Sure.
There's a lot of people are asking these questions and we are short on time. Okay. We have a question by Mr. Ernesto. He says young adult learners from the age of 16 to 18 years tend to be very deviant on classroom rules. They go against what is being expected from them. How do we go about this without seeming to be too controlling?
Mm-hmm. Reinforce. People should be motivated. They should see the apple at the end, like they want to get something in return. Promising them that they will pass the school year is not enough. You need to put some kind of reinforcement system. As a teacher, especially because as an employee, you are reinforced by the fact that you are getting a paycheck at the end of the day. If you come late, it is cut from your paycheck. So this is enforcing you. It's a reinforcement. As students or children, they need to find something that they really want. So if they like football, then I would say we will play this football game once we have reached these targets. Put a reinforcement they really want, not a reinforcement that you think you can give, because what I want and what you want is completely different. So let's look at what they really want, what's their dreams, what they want to achieve, and work within that. So if they want to make a movie, then the reward will be that we will sit together and create a movie. If they want to make their own song, or there must be something that they all enjoy and they are really, it's their dream to do and make. And as a smart teacher, look into that and work on reinforcing the task you want them to achieve by the reward that they really, really want. That answers your question?
It certainly does. Another question that we have here, and I think it's quite relevant to the time today, is by Miss Ravneet Kaur. Very simple question, but I'm sure we'll have layers to it. How to deal with escaping behavior and attention-seeking behavior in children?
Okay. For attention seeking is the child need to get your attention. So he, first of all, try to communicate with you, push you, you don't look at them, throw himself on the floor, you look at him, hi, you come and you look at him and you hold him and are you okay? He's getting the attention. Then the next time he wants to talk to you, immediately he throw himself on the floor because he knows that this is the way he's getting an attention. So for this behavior, you need to ignore and teach a replacement behavior. So when the child is tantruming because he wants your attention, you ignore. The minute he stops tantruming and he's quiet, then you reinforce the quietness. That's very nice. Now I need to teach him how to ask. The next time you want to ask me for something, you need to come and say, excuse me, can I have or may I have? Or you give him a paper to submit if he doesn't talk. You have to give him a replacement behavior. Then you reward and reinforce the replacement behavior. So every time he do it, this is when he's getting the attention. Again, we have to give the attention before the behavior is happening. So I know that this child, Down syndrome children usually like to have attention. So if I give it to them in the beginning of the day, when they come, then they will not be engaged in the behavior. Escape behavior is different. Escape is, I don't want to go out. I don't want to move from my place. I don't want to. So here with the escape, you need to force the child to finish the task and then he goes. So he knows whether you want or you don't want, you need to still finish your task. So we have children, for example, you give them a math sheet, it have 9 questions. They throw the chair, then the teacher tells them go out. Great. He's escaping doing the task and he's going out. So the next time he will throw the chair because the teacher is going to kick him out. So you don't kick him out. You make him sit, finish the task until he finishes it. Then he learns that every time I want to escape, there is no escape. I need to finish the task. And whatever he wants, you make it as a reward. So again, finish the task and then you will go out. So he knows that when he finishes the task, he will get the reward that he wants. So always keep rewards not in the hand of the children all the time. Reward is given to him only when the task is finished. So for example, if I'm using iPad as a reward, I don't give the iPad during the day. I just give it at the reward time. So he's always looking forward to get that reward. This is how you can shape behavior.
Okay, I think I have 2 more questions that I'm going to take up, Dr. Hiba. And before that, may I please request you or your team to please share your email ID here, because a lot of participants with the compliments, they're also asking us your email IDs and the way to get
Sure, my email is Dr. Hiba, DRHIBAH, at Maharat, MAHARATGCC.com.
You're very generous, I must say.
Thank you. No issues.
Dr. Hiba,
question?
This is a question from Miss Nadzia Amul. And
Okay.
she thinks, what are the professional hierarchies within the health sector and child protection relating to social workers?
It's, as I said, in 2000 I think 2012, when there is a big shift towards child protection issues, and still a growing field. There is a department in the police to deal with this investigation, and they take it seriously. But again, it is more of when it becomes more criminal. The social care sector is the one who takes care of the day-to-day things that we see commonly, like abuse, physical and neglect. And within the social care, they do have a department that consists of psychologists and social care workers who work together. And when you report to them, they will come to you, sit with you as a professional and ask and get all the facts, written reports, whatever you have, pictures. And this is another thing. Remember, it's not ethical to take a photo of a child. Huh? So when we take a picture of a child being bruised, you are here at risk because number one, if you take a picture of a child being abused, you become a victim of investigation. Why did you take my child's picture without my permission? So we go back to policies. If I am in an organization where I work with children, like I am a special needs center or a school or a nursery or a place where I have children, it is very important that I set that in my policies. So when I give the parents the contract or the agreement or the enrollment form, there will be a section where I am allowing you to take pictures of my child. Because if you don't have that, then even when an abuse happens and you want to take a picture of it, you are really questioned. So this is where child protection can take pictures without the permission of parents, because it's for investigation reasons. So the legal part of abuse is a very complex. It's not easy. For the question, the hierarchy, it's not about hierarchy, it's about the laws and the regulation that we work with. You have to be careful of what pictures you take in order to submit in your file. How do you report? Which hospital the child goes to? If he go to a non-government hospital, that report is not valid in court. So even if the abuser abused the child and the child, you saw him, he's bleeding, he's in a bad situation, you take him to the nearest hospital, and the hospital give you a report, that report it's not valid in court because it is not from a government hospital. So it's very important to understand the legal system that works around child protection issues. As we say, it's a growing field and there is a lot more to be given. Awareness is one. Why I'm talking about it today, because I want to raise awareness. So the first step is to make sure that everyone in the community understand what is the signs of abuse, what is not abuse, where do I go if I see something wrong. That's the first step. Then it goes for the legal system, where they also have to look at, this is what happened, how we can deal with it, how we are going to approach the parent, what does the parent need to do. Because in many cases, they go and seek the parent, and the parent avoid them. He doesn't want to speak to them. They go to his work, they sit in his office. So now he knows that he's at risk of being exposed if he doesn't comply. And this is how the legal system works, is they force the parents to sit down and discuss and make the change. And then eventually they take the child into, we don't have foster care here, but we have a second degree relative, like a grandmother or an uncle or an aunt, to give him a more protective environment if the child is living in an unprotected environment. But again, it is a complex, it takes years in court, and a lot of time it's heartbreaking because the child doesn't get the rights because of the gaps in the legal system.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's an eye-opener, and it's really, really nice to hear that. Thank you for taking out time for us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the second session of day one. We shall now break for about 5 minutes and will return at 12:10 UAE time and 1:40 India time. I request you, please keep yourself logged into this session and await our dynamic third and the last speaker of the day. We see you shortly, everyone. Thank you so much. Please stay connected. Please stay logged in.